Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle podcast, episode number 11. Cinema is the most beautiful fraud in the whole world. Jean-Luc Godard.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome back, guys, to this amazing interview that we're having, part 2 now, with Suzanne Lyons, independent film producer. Before we jump in, head on over to filmfestivaltips.com. That's filmfestivaltips.com, where you can download my 6 secrets on how I got into over 500 international film festivals for cheap or free. So without further ado, let's jump right back into the interview. So can you share with us a few pitfalls or any pitfalls that you might have come across producing indie films? I know that's a really broad question, but anything you can share.
Pitfalls that I've come across producing. So as a producer, you mean?
Yes.
Like areas for me?
Yeah.
I'd have to say, let me just think back. I think for me, some of the time, because I so trust people so much of the time, I'm somebody who's been really trained to kind of fall back in love with people on a daily basis, even when, we kind of have a falling out or something. Mm-hmm. I'm really great. I'm really, really, really great at forgiveness. I worked on it for years. I really processed it and still do, obviously. No distinction is ever complete. I mean, we're always processing through life as we hit new plateaus and peaks and so on. So, but for me, there were times when I think I trusted people so much because at those first interviews, let's say you're a production designer, a makeup artist, costume designer, or line producer, whatever. I so trusted that everybody was on the team and people were excited about the project as I was, that I never kind of stood in leadership enough because I think my trust level was so high, or maybe I just wasn't standing in leadership enough, maybe a little bit of both. Don't know, as I'm kind of looking back, that at that meeting, when you have your cast, when you have your crew together, I'm sorry now that I kind of didn't create some stronger parameters. Like, for example, one of the things that people had to do in Flash Forward was sign a contract or, make a promise that you would not complain to anybody other than the person who could do something about that complaint. That's and awesome. That would be for the whole 30 days of the program, right? It was a month-long program. And you were not allowed to complain to anybody who in your life who was, unless they were the person who could solve that. Like, for example, if you had employees around you, all your colleagues at a firm or wherever, or in development somewhere, and you had a problem with your boss, you were now allowed to sit around and talk about that problem or, share those complaints or whatever. You had to go directly to the person in charge. That is something I wished I had put on every crew deal memo when I think back in time. Mm-hmm. So much time is wasted on sets when I would hear people coming and saying, so-and-so was saying that, they were not happy with this, or so-and-so is not happy, or whatever. I would hear these things from other people, and I'm thinking that the time spent wasted was heartbreaking. If I had people make a commitment on that first day at the table read when the whole crew is together, and when I meet with the cast at their table read on that first day, that first rehearsal day, then, and say, listen, here's the way we're going to run the set. Let's all get on board together as a team. What is there anybody who's not feeling that way? Is there any reason you're not? I'm making this a safe place for you to tell me, are there issues that you're dealing with? Have you worked with that person before and not been happy? Let's get that out now. I found out that on the last movie, there were 2 keys, who had a falling out prior to, and that kind of led to some issues and that sort of thing. So I said, let's bring everything up now. Let's clear the air. Let's get on the same team. team. And then I would probably say to them, what is your commitment? If we come out with this great movie and it does well and your names are up on the credits, what can this do to your career? What can it make possible that's not now possible? Literally create a space of great possibility. So people are all in the team together, kind of like a football team or a basketball team or, some sports team, like being in the Olympics together, How can we make this such a win-win for everybody? What do we need to get out of the way? How do we need to clear the air to make that happen? And how do we need to get excited and create possibility and opportunity for people to make that happen? And the other thing is, let's set some parameters, like this thing about let's not complain. If we got a complaint, go to the person who can solve it right now. Let's go right to the top. Okay, if you're with a costume designer and you got issues, go to her, let her know so that she can let me know or whatever. So, just set the parameters like you would in a business. If you're in a business, companies, big businesses, bring in consultants to work with them on how can we have great relationships with each other? How can we be honest with each other? How can we communicate? That's the other thing is I notice communication breakdowns happen a lot on set, which leads to problems. And I'm responsible for that. Everything that I'm telling you comes back to me. I'm the producer. I'm the one setting the stage. The director sets the stage to a degree for the tone, in terms of his vision or her vision. But as the producer, you're the one setting it early on in pre-production all the way through into post and beyond. Because it's your job as the producer. And so everything I'm saying that, those fallouts that have happened over those films over those years, that's all my fault. I'm not beating myself up here, Alex. I'm just kind of creating a wake up call for other people to know what the pitfalls were that I fell into, that I didn't, maybe when I trusted that person early on that they were going to get the job done and I didn't ask them for a timeline. I'm thinking somebody specific on the last movie when I didn't ask her for a timeline. That was my fault because I know with certain people in certain positions, we need their timeline. And people, just because I have been studying business for 30 years and teaching business for all this time, doesn't mean that everybody has those distinctions. She didn't even know what a timeline was.
Right.
And I said, well, given that your job is to do such and such, I need to know over those months what you're going to be doing, when those milestones are going to be happening, when you're going to be setting this up and that up. And people don't have the distinctions of business, and yet making a movie is a business. And just because I'm a business person, like I said, doesn't mean that my cast and crew have that as well. So I'm not saying that you have to hire a management consultant. I'm just saying you as the producer need to know those skills. My God, you better be trained in those business skills. So then you can start implementing those early on and be standing in that leadership mode, knowing that you are the person setting the stage, for the next number of months on this film. So I think that's probably the main thing, is to set that tone by standing in leadership and standing in that business arena, putting on that business hat and knowing what really needs to happen. It's not that you like that person, you've hired them, they went through the interview process great, you really like that key, your line producer likes that key, he or she is great, but okay, what needs to happen over those next 2 months to ensure that they stay that way? Because their fears are going to come up, their concerns and terrors are going to show their ugly heads when push comes to shove, sort of thing. So what can we do to make sure that we're able to handle that, and that people don't move into reaction and anger and upset, but that we can resolve things before they get to that state. So it's a lot to take on as a producer. But once again, if you wear that business hat and you stand in leadership, you need those business skills on set and prior to.
That is absolute gold, honestly. That last whole answer is something that they don't teach you in film school. And you learn, if you're lucky, after 20 years of making movies, you may never figure that out until it's towards the end of your career. So that is a huge gold nugget that you gave the audience. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
So what is the importance of a business plan, and when going after financing specifically, and are some tips to actually make it look great and make it work?
Oh my God, that's so good. Holy Lord. I just got two, because I'm also doing exec producing right now, right? Okay. So I'm working with some investors. So 2 different production companies sent me their business plan a couple weeks ago. And when in the future, I'm going to ask both if I can use both. As
what not to do?
Oh my God. The ultimate in what not to do. I mean, so the ultimate in what not to do that it's a poster child for what not to do.
Right.
And the other one is the most brilliant, phenomenal business plan I ever saw.
Wow.
To the point where they are starting production in 2 weeks, just so you know.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, amazing cast. I'm not going to, mention who either are at this point, but
sure. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But anyways, phenomenal difference. And one of them, you could, like I said to that company and that team is because they couldn't see anything wrong with it. And I'm thinking, guys, have you looked at any others? I actually said, because when Kate and I did our first, we looked at 10, 20. All I could do was say, please send me your business plan, guys. Your movie's done now. Just send it to me. I just need more examples. And I bought books on it. I went online. I had mentors, for God's sakes, to show me what to do. I did everything. It was a new arena for me. It was a learning curve, but my God, go through it, right? So I said to them, did you look at others and what is this based on? Oh, no, we didn't look at any others. It's on my computer now. I wish I could show you. When I sent it to my investment group, my broker, he's like, I can't send this anywhere, Suzanne. How can I send this off? There's no operating agreement. There's nothing that shows what's in it for the investor. There's no real list of comparable films for people to see. There's a wish list of actors that go from oh my God!
Tom Cruise
to
Brad Pitt, right? To you, right?
Yeah, all the way down to to my neighbor, right?
Right.
Such a range of dream of wish. Of everything. Not like zeroing it in on here's the 3 that we're looking to go to. It was just. Like some of it was not even kind of legible. Not even a place, the phone number, who to call. Some of the bios were not clear. Not all the bios were there. Anyways, not a great synopsis that went along with it either. Just not a lot of care given to it at all.
Sloppy.
Whereas the other one was one of the most brilliant things you've ever seen. Now, did it probably take more time? Mm-hmm. Yes, but it's a business. Every movie you do is a business. Each business launch out there in the world, every launch takes time. Mm-hmm. So if you're serious about going out and raising money or sending this off to people who are sending it to brokers for you or setting up meetings or going to a sales presentation yourself or whatever, then sorry, but you've got to put the work into it. If you don't know how to do it, then read other people's, get a mentor, bring in an assistant who's done it before and give them a credit. If you don't have the money, give them whatever, but just do something and I've done very small versions. I'm a big believer in not big business plans. You should, my God, my book talks about keeping it as simple as possible. My investor, does he want to, read an 80-page business plan, on, let's say, my dentist on his Friday off, or does he want to go golfing? He wants to go golfing. So I'm not going to give him 70 pages. I'm probably going to give him 10 or 12 pages. But there's a way to make those 10 or 12 pages phenomenal and giving him all the information he needs. How big was
the phenomenal one? How many pages was it?
Well, you know what? I was thinking, as soon as I said it, I was going to go in and check. It was probably about 15 pages.
Oh my God.
But it was beautifully orchestrated.
Tight.
Really tight, really lovely. They had done their homework. They literally listed the areas of the potential demographics. And when I worked with Empower a couple of years ago, I was doing my World War I. We were trying to get that one off the ground at the time when they were doing bigger budget films. And one of the things that's their big philosophy over there, and I got kind of trained a little bit by them when I was there, in meetings, was that be really, really good about what are those demographics and psychographics. Okay, so maybe it's a kid's movie, and it's a faith-based movie, for example, that you might be doing. In my case, let's just take mine, actually. It wasn't faith-based, but it was like family values. It was World War II, a children's movie, Boy Scouts. It was about the Boy Scouts who had served in World War One. You know,
Oh, wow.
hundreds of thousands of Boy Scouts served in World War One as spies for the Allies. So what happened is, so of course my brain went to, it's a kid, you know, my demographic is kids, and maybe another demographic is, you know, moms and dads, you know, who buy it for the kids or take it. And I remember sitting in the meeting with Empower, and they came up with probably 10 different demographics and psychographics. They said veterans, you know, soldiers, you know, faith-based communities because of the amazing family values, the whole teamwork thing. They created demographics that had to do with teamwork. I mean, it was so they went on and on and on, creating psychographic and demographics that my little brain hadn't even thought of.
Right.
So maybe it means sitting with a group of your friends, you know, and brainstorming, you know, a little bit as to what, you know, what are some other demographics and psychographics that this could be? You know, what am I not thinking? I've only got my one brain. And even that is, you know, overwhelmed at the moment. So what are some other things? You know, brainstorming sessions are worth their weight in gold. Get a bunch of friends, take them out to breakfast, or get them a bunch on the phone on a on a Skype call and say, guys, you know, all I can come up with was 3 things. What are others? You know, I mean, that in itself, if I'm an investor reading that, it's no accident that they've been able to raise so much money and bring on the producing team and the cast that they have, because when you see that, you go, oh my God. You know, it's, of course, you know, I could feel that I would contribute my money, because look at the arenas it's going to be going to in their case, you know, or in my case, if you were an investor and all I said is, oh yeah, this World War I movie, you know, it's a great movie for kids. And you think, well, that's great. But then if I started listing, you know, veterans and, you know, faith-based communities and and if I started going on, you go, oh my God, there's all that other group that I could be selling, that could sell to, then you as an investor would feel far more confident. And so they really did their homework on that, and other areas as well that I'm blanking on. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but they really kind of looked at what are the areas of importance in a business plan, and they really delved into how could they make it look as appealing as possible.
Okay, I know that's a big kind of black art. Is business plans as a general statement. I made a business plan once, and it was not 15 pages. Got it. So that's good to hear now. Now, do you have any tips on how to raise money for your film, for an indie film?
It depends on how much money it is. If you're going out like Kate and I were doing with those SAG Ultra Lows, you know, if you're raising 100,000, 150, 200, 250, you know, even up to 300, I would say, you know, pretty easy to go the very independent route, because if you're keeping those amounts under 10,000, that is something that your friends, your families, your colleagues, your dentist, your chiropractor, I mean, you could literally sell units and offer the kinds of benefits that I was offering and a great back end and great, perks and all kinds of things like that, and make everybody have some fun with it and that sort of thing. So I think that's something that's very doable. Opening the LLC, you know, creating your operating agreement and your PPM, you know, doing a business plan, start going out to people, setting a very serious timeline for yourself.
Now there is there is paperwork, and a lot of filmmakers don't understand. There is paperwork you have to fill out to be able to go out and ask for money. Correct? Other than crowdfunding, but it's traditional way. And you can also do crowdfunding at the same time, because that's a donation that doesn't interfere with your private placement memorandum. But you know, go online and read operating agreements and private placement memorandums. You know, you don't have to hire an attorney. It's going to be $25,000 to have them do it for you. There's lots of templates out there. Got in my course, you know, that I teach privately now. The binder includes all that stuff, probably $25,000 worth of stuff and contracts, of course. But what I always recommend to people, even in my book, I always say I'm not an attorney. Even if you're using a template from somebody else or online, you know, if you can't afford to have the attorney to do it from scratch, which most of us in the low budget world can't,
then at least go to them and pay them an hourly rate to read it over for you. Better to pay $300 than, $5,000 or $20,000 for something, but at least have them read it over, because they may say, oh, you know what, this part's outdated. It needs to be updated here. They'll circle. I did that on the last movie, actually, where he found 4 little things for me that were off.
Oh, nice.
So it was great. Yeah. And for $200, for 2 hours, for $400, I got this attorney, and it was fantastic. So anyway, so that's a possibility, is to really do it yourself. And I think that part's fun. And it's a bit challenging. You go through that learning curve. You open your own LLC, which is $70. You go online, just takes a few minutes. You pay the $70. So once that's done, then you've got that ability to then, start putting your PPM together, or your operating agreement. And then, of course, your business plan. And that whole thing took Kate and I about 2 or 3 months our first time around to put all that together on our first film, when we were doing that little low budget Candy Stripers. And
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And then we were ready to then start going out and talking about it and that sort of thing. And then we held a few sales presentations, and we also brought on a lot of people as kind of associate producers to help us and introduce us to other investors and things like that. If it's more money, if all of a sudden you're starting to ask for 25 or 50,000, I did try that on Omar the Camel, on my Christmas Omar the Christmas Camel, my animated special, a feature. I ran into a lot of problems because that one was asking for more money. And what happened is, even though people would be excited, like let's say if your dentist actually saying he's excited about it, when you start hitting people up for big amounts like that, those people are at such a high scale of income and net worth that they don't make the decisions anymore a lot of the time on their own movie, on their own funding. They have a team who makes those decisions for them. I remember once on one of my projects, can't remember which one it was actually. It was I think there was 2 guys from the Lakers. I think it was a faith-based movie. God, I'm blanking on which one it was. Anyways, it might have been Omar the Christmas Camel, or maybe the Scouts Honor. They definitely wanted to put, it was Omar the Camel. Okay. They wanted to put money in. In fact, they wanted to fund the whole thing. I think the budget was $3.2 million.
Okay.
And they were determined to do the whole thing. I mean, these guys were like, there was so many, this happened a couple of times with that Christmas movie, I have to tell you, where people were like, oh my God, I love this. I had, at one point there was almost a competition, and all of it fell apart, all of it. Because once it got to their team, their accountant, it's like, no, we don't put money in film here. We're putting your money in, I don't know, stocks, bonds, real estate, whatever. I don't know, whatever, investment teams do for their clients. So, but these guys, as much as they wanted to do the movie, they did not end up putting their $1.5 million each into the movie. So I found that was interesting. Now, is that always the case? No, I'm not saying don't not do it. Certainly go for it and give it a try. Especially if you are in a state or a country where you're going to be getting, 35% back tax credits, where you actually have a possibility of bringing on a star where you can do some potential pre-sales in advance, even if they're not as big. At least you've got that. Maybe you've got a friend who is a good star, or you're able to bring that person on because of the type of project it is, or the book that it's based on, or whatever. Then, or the fact that it's a true story or whatever. I mean, if you've got that going for you, where you can say to the investor, yes, I know it's $3 million, but you know what? The chances of getting the money back are good, because we know we're getting at least 30% of that tax incentive back, and that 30% is going directly to you, the investor. That you have a guarantee on, and then we're going to bring the cost down because we've done some pre-sales or whatever. Or by the way, we've got so-and-so on the movie. Donald Sutherland is on the movie now. So that helps, with that. then I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that I found it harder because a lot of times those people didn't necessarily have the say. It was their investment team their accountants who more ran their lives than they did.
Got it.
Yeah. And then the next thing, of course, is then, obviously looking at the bigger budgets, which I'm helping some people with now, where you're going to actual brokers, where you meet up, you make it a point to find out who are some of those investment groups around. You start asking questions, you start, talking to, exec producers and brokers and start finding out what are ways that you can maybe, get into that world a little bit more and see what's going on in that world and what's needed in that world. And that's when you start to maybe then have to get into those fancier, presentations and business plans and so on. Okay. And then the other thing is co-productions. Obviously, if you've got possibility of doing co-productions, that will be excluding the U.S. But, if you've got a great project, by an Irish writer or Canadian writer, and you've got, a director on board, some countries are getting more open where you're allowed to maybe have an American director or whatever. But for the most part, it would probably mean director and writer outside the country, just because those are worth a lot of points. So director and the writer. Then you can do co-productions, where you do a Canadian-British co-production, where that gives you 2 sets of incentives and that sort of thing. And then potential for maybe a telefilm funding. I know that one of the projects I've been helping out with recently, they got a tremendous amount of money from telefilm, and they even got a fair amount of money from their distributor. What is
telefilm? What is telefilm?
Telefilm is the Canadian company that supports, like most countries except the U.S. In the UK, they do the same thing. Where if it's really supporting that country or in some way, it's like
promoting,
a good family film or a good quality film, or based on a Canadian book, which is like the one we did, a couple of years ago on a very big Canadian book. Then there's that possibility of them putting in some funding early on, and that sort of helps. Also hit up your sales agents early on, because sometimes now the sales agent, I must say, I'm one of the ones I've been hearing about recently. They got I'm not going to say how much, but I was shocked at how much money they got in advance to make the movie. I can't even tell you how much it was. I was so surprised. It was like the old days.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. You just need to be smart about, go to the American film market and sit in on those seminars and get some mentors. I think, me, Alex, that the main thing I always tell people to do is get a mentor. Obviously do the right protocol for getting mentors. Right. Go on my YouTube channel and watch my 10 tips on the protocol for getting a mentor, please, before you go out and get a mentor. And that's at youtube.com/Suzanne Lyons, and then click on the one about mentors. But get a mentor who's been there, done that, who knows the investment world. That's what I did. That's one of the first things I did when Kate and I were looking at doing some bigger budget films, is we talked took some mentors out to coffee. So, I would say there's a lot of different ways nowadays, and there's a lot of money in the world now, a lot of money going in. People have done the real estate thing. They've done the stocks. They've done that. I mean, you'd be shocked at how much money is going into film these days. So there's no shortage. There's no scarcity. There is a tremendous abundance, and think outside the box and think outside your country. I mean, I've been reading projects that are based in China, of course, right now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working on a phenomenal project that's based in China and dealing with 2 Chinese companies that have offices here in LA, and made a point to get to know those companies. You
mean you made a relationship with them first?
Yes, absolutely. You bet I did. Yeah, honest to God, I went to coffee with one of the guys, and we became good friends. And then I met another one, and invited him to come and even speak at one of my classes. So, nice. And then I talked to some people who are already in China doing productions and kind of finding out the pitfalls, what to watch for and so on. And met with literally one of the top, probably one of the top 3 producers. I had coffee. I'd say a good 2.5-hour coffee meeting with her last year during when she was over here for one of the markets. Nice. So yeah, I created those relationships. Now we didn't end up working together, but I learned a lot. about what they're looking for and so on, and was able to create more relationships based on my relationships with her. So in Korea too, that's the other one, is working obviously with Korea is another gigantic market at the moment. So that's and I've been forming those relationships,
Very cool.
and I'm open to to just kind of finding out what's going on around the world. I've got very good relationships in Germany, which is one of the big markets of the world. And recently, and I have a really good relationship with one of the top companies there. And I had a script recently that I thought might be a fit and sent it. Turned out it wasn't a fit, but I kept that relationship going. And I've been friends with them now for probably about 10 years as they've gotten bigger and bigger. In the UK, where I started, I still have lots and lots and lots of relationships in the UK, of course. And it's a small world. I mean, you just, you've got to be, and I went to Strategic Partners one year as a producer. It's 150 people that they put together, and they, it's no cost, to you as the producer, other than your flight to Halifax. And follows TIFF. It follows the Toronto Film Festival, overlaps by a couple of days. And they set up all the meetings for you, and you all meet with each other. It's kind of like the dating thing where you have like 10 minutes together, and it's
Speed
great.
dating,
And
right.
yeah, speed dating. Yeah. Where you pitch your projects to each other. And
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Phenomenal companies from all around the world. I think the year I was there, South Africa and India, I think, were our two sponsors. But everybody was there from around the world anyway, but they were the main sponsors. And I made a point that costs a little bit of money, but hey, I have a business, so I have to invest in every year. I have to look at investing in some sort of training or relationship building or things like Strategic Partner or going to TIFF or going to the American film market or whatever. It's part of my business. I've got to keep getting trained and creating those relationships. I mean, I got a call from Singapore Media Academy a couple of years ago to come and teach a course over there. And my first instinct was, oh my God, all the way to Singapore. And then my second instinct was, don't be ridiculous.
Of course,
look at the people. I met every producer in Singapore for drinks at 6:00 when I finished teaching every night. I met with them. I went to the studio. I met everybody. They own the animation companies in Indonesia. So I've got my relationships in Indonesia now. I mean, it's all because I made that effort and I had a ball teaching. I'm still friends with all the students, for God's sakes,
So let me ask you a question. Do you need a name actor nowadays in your indie films?
Yes, you do. I don't even think not even a giant spider would be good right now. I mean, I think even if you've got your giant spider, like in the old days with our horror films, right. I think you still need that actor to go along with him or her. And here's the thing: as a producer, what I would say is be really smart about putting together phenomenal combinations of people. It's not just who is high on the Richter scale of IMDb anymore. It's all about, what are, in addition to that, what are some social media phenomenal people, like in the movie I did, not the last one, obviously, and the one before, we looked at some great actors. Obviously, there's people from the TV world in there, from Glee, actually, and then from the feature world, we got Jake Busey, Heather Morris. Then we looked at who's big, really big. It was a horror film, so who's big in the YouTube world, in the social media world. And Perez Hilton had 10 million fans, 10 million. So he's, of course, in our movie.
And then he promoted it. And of course,
then he's going to be promoting it like crazy when the time comes. So we really looked around for what's a great, and then there's another person in there. She's a phenomenal singer and model, and she's really great in terms of her number of fans. Yes, I'm not going to say you don't sacrifice by having people who can't act. They still have to be actors, of course, and there's still something that that they want to do and that they're good at. But look and make sure that you're also handling all those bases, so that by the time you get to the distributor, if you decide to go to the distribution and sales agent route, that you've got that ammunition. You can say, listen, in the last movie, I used this amazing singer-songwriter. He's just adorable, this young guy. Just the most sweetest guy. It was these boys that, who find these chest of toys for the future. He's got 2 million hits. 2 million hits on his YouTube.
Sure.
So for me going to and not to mention everybody else in the movie. I mean, we were really smart about it. I also have this wonderful guy from the WWE. Just I'm used to now, using that, and
Sure.
they've got phenomenal, obviously,
Fan base, yeah.
hits as well, and great social media. So I mean, it's all stuff you've got to keep in mind. It's a business. You've got to be smart about how you're putting that whole thing together.
Now, what are your feelings between traditional distribution and now the new self-distribution models?
Sorry, my phone's ringing, so you'll just give me that. I apologize for some reason I can't hear you as well when it rings. So
No worries.
it's almost done. I think it's almost done. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Say
no
it
worries.
again.
I'll edit this out. Don't worry. What are your feelings on traditional distribution versus the new self-distribution models that are available?
Yeah, see, I'm really thrilled that after 120 years, the tables have turned.
Finally.
Because for all those years, the producer, spends 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever years of their life trying to get that movie off the ground and getting investors who trust them to get that money back. And then you make this great movie, and then what happens? It goes to the sales agent, and there's such an expensive. A lot of the time they charge tremendous amount, I find, for the first, money in for their expense, as well as, high percentages for commission. Sometimes now they're going back to the old days, because I think there's a lot of them concerned of the 25%, which, it's just astronomical, not to mention the expenses. And then the distributor that they sell it to, if you do a domestic distribution, then a lot of times you don't get any split rights. So, maybe a few, but when I was doing Candy Stripers, you sold it for that one amount. It's same with the whole world, actually. It's called a buyout. Mm-hmm. So whatever that buyout is, if you're getting, 3,000, from the UK, that's it. And that's probably it for 10 years or 7 years
from
or 15
UK,
years or
sure.
12 years. Yeah. And in domestic, you might be getting, 50,000, but that's for probably 15 years. So those are buyouts. So if it all adds up to, 300,000 and your movie was 250,000, but don't forget your sales agents is taking off their commission, and they're also taking off their, all that expense, of 25 to 50,000 or whatever that is. Then by the time, and then you pay your residuals and so on to SAG, your investor, barely gets their money back, which means you as the producer, well, the investor would get maybe a third of their money back. And then you as the producer aren't making that money to make it worthwhile. So the producers, the directors, I apologize, the distributors and the sales agents always said, oh, Suzanne, we want you and Kate to be part of our team and, continue to use your movies, but if I can't get a successful amount of money back to then make my investors happy enough to reinvest, then how can I make that next movie? So there is no team. That's all bullshit. They'll be on, and they've got 20 other, 30 other movies that they're selling at the AFM anyway, or more, in a library of 200 or 300 movies. So they care little after 2 markets. They care very little about your movie. You'll be lucky if you even see it by the time you get to the 3rd market in their suite at the American Film Market, which is what happened to us on one of ours. So, a lot of times it stops after that 1 year of markets. That's it. And then they've sold as much as they're going to sell for the world. You've barely made your money back, or maybe a portion for the investors, if that. So, and that's it. Then you're done for 7 to 15 years. So with the self-distribution model, if there's ways that you can, be able to sell directly to a fan bases that you've got through your actors or whatever, mm-hmm. Or sell through your own, setting up of whatever channel you can possibly sell, by creating that fan base over the next year for yourself, or that niche market for yourself, then there's that chance where you can make the money, where you as the producer, so then not only you will actually make some money for a change, but you can pay your investors back. They're happy. They want to contribute back and make the next one. So right. Then it becomes a thriving community for the producers, and it's not scrambling to try to get that next one, and then you're exhausted by the end of it and never want to make another movie again because of what you've gone through, or your investors are unhappy because you weren't able to pay them back only a portion, if any. So I just think it's so nice that the tables have turned for the first time ever in these past couple of years. It's brand new. We're not sure quite how to do it yet. There's a book coming out called Crowdsourcing. Mm-hmm. which is going to be fantastic, bifocal press. So that's going to be phenomenal. And I can't wait for that to come out, because that'll kind of give more ideas on how can you build those niche markets in advance.
Yeah.
How can you get people, how can you even look at your script in such a way that you can add things into the script now excuse me, where it can then help. Let's just go back to vegan. Okay. If you can add that to your script now, that one of your characters is a vegan or a raw vegan, that opens up that whole new community of online promoting to that whole group of people, which is now hundreds of thousands of people. Right.
Right.
So you now have control over that, because early enough on, you're adapting your script to create a way to then increase your potential for self-distribution down the road.
That's interesting.
And even if you want to go the old-fashioned route of distribution, even then you can say to your distributor, hey, guess what? I have included 5 different areas in my script where I have got a potential for a music video, which is what I'm doing right now, by the way, with my singer in my last movie. And our goal is to literally have 500,000 fans hits on that music video by this time next year when the movie comes out, right? I put in there, let's say you put in a vegan or whatever. Let's say you put in, maybe there's a faith-based arena, or in the case of family values, very big right now. Let's say there's another area that you might be hitting on. Maybe it's veterans, that you put in there now. So that opens up another community, so if you're saying to your distributor, 8 months from now, guess what? I have opened up, because I'm thinking early enough in my script. Now my movie is done, and I have now got 1 million hits on those 5 different arenas that I've continued to nurture.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Since these videos came out and these YouTubes came out and these chat rooms came out or whatever, I've got 1 million people ready to buy this movie, and in some cases you can even break down. I hear anyways and find out where some of them are from, that 25% of them are Japanese. So your sales, so your distributor there, might go, oh my God, that would create a Japanese sale for us or whatever. So, it's time for the producers to get really smart about this whole thing. And know that we've got some say in the matter now, and we're not at the beck and call of the sales agent and the distributors. That we can actually do some generating on our own to either self-distribute, but you have to be very smart about it, to prepare a year or so in advance, or that we have at least ammunition that if we do go to the distributor and he offers us $25,000 for our family film, we can say, no, you know what? I got other distributors knocking on the door, sweetheart, because I've got 3 million fans, who already want to buy this movie. Right. And then you create the competition where all of a sudden then your number's up to 500,000 for domestic or whatever. Who knows? It's the early days, obviously. But
it's the Wild Wild West. There's still the Wild Wild West out there.
Yes. Yeah.
Very much so.
It is. It very much so. And, it's like I said, with some of these new books coming out and that sort of thing, it's there's another gentleman that I'll give you his name to maybe interview, because he's remarkable. He's the one that's going to be writing the book. He's the owner of Stage 32.
Oh yeah, and, what's his? Yeah, I know Stage 32.
Yeah, Richard, and he's just absolutely brilliant, and he's doing a tremendous amount, probably more research than anybody at the moment, on this whole arena. But I interviewed a lot of people for my book too. There is a whole chapter in my book on different areas of self-distribution as well. So there's some great people there who've kind of laid the road for us. But that was a few years ago, and now even more has changed, and we have more
daily.
ability. Yeah, daily. I know. But anyway, so that was a good question though.
Alex, and it was a fantastic answer.
Oh, good.
So I have two more questions, and they're fun.
Okay.
Any crazy on-set or off-set filmmaking stories that you can share with us?
Crazy on-set filmmaking stories,
or offset, like just a fun anecdote that you would be like, this is how crazy our business is. Because I know I have 1,000 of them, but I'm sure you do too.
And do you mean something where we kind of learned a lesson from, you mean? Or?
No, it could just be if you want to, if there's a lesson to be learned, great. If there isn't, if you're like, this is some crazy stuff that happened on the set this day.
God. Oh my God.
I know, right?
You're right. Now that's a book. Oh geez. Oh my gosh!
If you don't remember anything, it's okay.
Because the one that I remember was actually where we had such a breakdown in communication that I had to make an executive decision. I was the only producer for a few weeks on that particular set, and we had a lot of different cultures there, 3 different languages, 4 different cultures from around the world, and there was major breakdown and upset and anger, and everybody was fighting with everybody. And I mean, it was just
Tower of Babel. It's a Tower of Babel.
God, it was unbelievable, unbelievable. And I had to make an executive decision. At the end of week 1, I decided to throw what we would call a wrap party. And we had a party on that Saturday night where it was the most amazing party ever, where I thought, I'm not even going to go. I even said to the other actors, we're not even going to walk in until midnight. It opened at 9. I rented a club. And we had till 4 a.m. And I said, when I show up at midnight, we'll see what happens. And then we'll know if we're, what the next number of weeks is going to be like. Right. And I walked in at midnight and it was hilarious. People were who had been fighting were dancing with each other, waltzing with each other.
Drunk, of course.
Totally drunk. Everybody, I love you, man. I love you, man. I love you, man. People who had, were practically in fist fights the day before.
Right.
It was so absolutely hilarious. And I honestly, the rest of that was the best experience on set I have ever had.
Awesome. So lesson learned is have a drunk out party after week 1 on all your movies, and you'll have a smooth transition for the rest of the shoot.
Maybe.
Start a trend. It. We can start a trend. And the last question, I ask this question of all my guests. It's a tough question, but I always like pointing it to everybody to see what you think. What are your top 3 films of all time?
Oh, not just the ones that I did, you mean? Myself, you mean?
Yes.
Top 3 films.
Yes.
Oh my God, that is hard. Oh, I was
just pick
prepared.
3 films that tickle your fancy at this moment. It's okay.
I'd have to say Little Romance is the very first one that came to mind.
Little Romance. Which one's that?
Little Romance, Diane Lane. Yeah, I think she was 12.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of my favorite. I'm a big romantic comedy person, and I love it.
Okay.
Oh my God, I could probably name a million of them. Oh my God, there's so many. Probably Harold and Maude, I'd have to say.
Course, yeah,
I think
Harold
that's everybody's, right?
Yeah, I remember Harold and Maude.
That's everybody's top 3. I could list a whole lot of those ones that come up just like that, I can think of some wonderful.
They just bubble up the second you have a question answered.
Some great fun comedies and all that kinds of stuff. But I would say some, because I'm such a big fan of also the action kind of thriller, that I have to say also Die Hard. I just love Die Hard.
So good.
I just love it.
Isn't that one of the most perfect action movies ever made?
Oh my God. I've probably seen the first, I've seen them all a million times, but I think the first one probably 10 times, honestly. I could go on about so many different movies. And then of my own, I'd have to say my first, which was Undertaking Betty, a romantic comedy.
Sure.
It's so funny. It is so funny and it's so adorable. And Chris Walken's hilarious. Brenda Blethyn is amazing. Alfred Molina is amazing. Naomi is hilarious. It's just one of my favorites. Now,
to go back to Die Hard for a second, there's a group of action movies in the 80s. I'm a big 80s guy. I love 80s action movies.
Yeah, me too. I know them all.
And I the bad ones from Canon and the good ones and all of them. But the 3 that always stick out to me as 3 of some of the best action movies ever made. Die Hard's on that list. Mm-hmm. Lethal Weapon.
Lethal Weapon's my next one, yeah.
And Predator.
Oh yes, that was
Predator is one of the best action.
Yeah.
And John McTiernan directed 2 of those, Die Hard and Predator.
That's right. I've seen them all multiple times, you know. Multiple.
Oh, and I must have seen Lethal Weapon and Die Hard probably 50 times. I worked in a video store when I was growing up, so I watched so many movies so many times.
Oh my God, me too. And for sci-fi, now that I think if I were to do the top 5 and you threw a sci-fi in there, as much as I love all the sci-fi, like Logan's Run and all of those things, I have to say Fifth Element, I think is still
so
my
much
top.
Fun.
Fifth Element, my top sci-fi of all time, I think.
It is.
My God, there's so damn many good ones, but I think I might have to go with
I mean, Fifth Element is one of the most unique sci-fi films ever made and Luc Besson at probably the height of his powers.
Anything with Luc Besson. Anything with Luc Besson.
I mean, at the height of his powers. I remember.
My God. Anything. I'd watch anything. And I think for foreign, for me, I would think Memory of a Killer is probably one of my favorite foreign.
Who directed that one?
That would be Eric Von Looy.
Oh, okay.
Eric Von Looy. If you haven't seen it, rent that. Memory of a Killer. Okay. I think one of the best in terms of for you as a director. And I know Eric personally, and I stay in touch all the time.
Is that the one where is that the one where he's an assassin and he starts losing his memory?
Yep.
Yes, I saw that trailer. Or I think I've even seen the movie years ago.
It was hard to get. I had to call his agent to get it. It was hard to get.
It's a different world now. Now it's like with Netflix and everything. It's so accessible.
Exactly. So accessible.
Suzanne, thank you so much for being on the show. You've it's such a great show. I'm breaking it up into 2 parts.
Okay. Sorry for talking so much.
No, it's wonderful. You've laid out some amazing gems for my audience. Like I said, what we do at Indie Film Hustle is I'm trying to create a world, a community where they get the truth of how it really is, not the stuff they teach at school, not the stuff in a lot of books. Like people who actually have done it, have been there, and show them like exactly what you've taught, what you just teach, and what you've said in this one. We just did an interview with Dove Simmons. I know I'm sure.
Oh yeah, of course. I know Dove for years and years and years.
Yeah, and Dove did a great interview as well. And he's like,
I love him.
And I took his course 15 years ago as well.
Yeah. Took it 22 years ago for me.
Exactly.
Did it first thing you do. First thing everybody has to do when they get to LA, take Dove's course.
Take Dove's course, and then go read Robert McKee's story. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Of course, yeah, and you do that one too. Actually, I did both. You're right. The first year here, those are the 2 that you have to do.
You got it. It's a prerequisite. You have to do both of those, and then you're ready. And then you should win an Oscar any day after that.
Yeah, exactly. Any day.
Well, Suzanne, thanks again. I won't keep you anymore. So thanks again for being on the show, and we really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much, Alex. That was fun.
Well, I don't know about you, but I got a ton out of that interview. Suzanne was remarkable, and I learned a ton from her from this interview. So I hope you guys picked up some gems as well. But before we go, head on over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to get your free audiobook download from over 40,000 different audiobooks you can download for free. So thank you guys so much for all the love, all the reviews. The show is growing so fast, so I'm very, very grateful. Please keep sharing the links. Please keep sharing our posts on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And if you can, please head over to indiefilmhustle.com/iTunes and leave us a good review, or leave us a review, an honest review of what you think of the show. It really does help us out a lot with the rankings on iTunes. You have no idea how much that helps us out. So thank you again so much, and keep that hustle going. Keep fighting for your dream. Don't ever stop. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.